Noted US daily, Washington Post has apologized for its tragic PM article on Manmohan Singh. It is also said that Indian Prime Minister's reply will be published in their next edition. The editors admitted that they had sent a query to the Prime Minister, to which the Prime Minister said that he will reply later. But instead of waiting for that reply, they went ahead and published this article. Well, this was a scathing critique of Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh in Washington this morning that created headlines. Washington Post said that the Prime Minister was silent even as his colleagues filled their pockets. So a scathing critique that appeared in Washington Post saw the government hit back. We heard the IND Minister Ambika Soni come out and say that they're going to lodge a protest with the US for the sort of statement that was written. We saw how after Time magazine, which dubbed Prime Minister Manmohan Singh as an underachiever, influential US newspaper, the Washington Post, tagged him as a tragic figure. The paper has now apologized for publishing this article. Well, the story was published with the headline, India's silent Prime Minister becomes a tragic figure. The newspaper, in fact, described Prime Minister as someone who helped set India on the path to modernity, prosperity and power, but now is in danger of going down in history as a failure. Well, referring to the slew of corruption scandals that have come up during Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh's tenure, the Daily says that the image of the scrupulously honorable intellectual technocrat has slowly given way to a dithering, ineffectual bureaucrat presiding over a deeply corrupt government. Well, those were the comments that were made in the Washington Post, but to which we also saw how the opposition quickly latched onto the opportunity and hit out at the Prime Minister, saying it's making global news. The scandals that are emerging in India are making global news, but the paper has now apologized. So influential US daily, Washington Post. We have Simon Denyer of Washington Post. He's the India Bureau Chief of the paper, and I believe he's the one who's written this article. What would you want to clarify, Simon?
Well, first of all, just to clarify one thing, I think there's been some sort of rumours that there'd been an apology, some kind of apology issued over the story, which isn't true. So, just to be absolutely plain on this, I contacted the PMO about this story, which actually I originally started writing in June. And I contacted them at that point. They referred me to some of the Prime Minister's speeches. I then held the story actually because I felt that the Prime Minister had just taken over the Finance Ministry and I wanted to see whether he did anything. And I thought it was, I didn't want to rush to judgment. And then I contacted them again and requested an interview with the Prime Minister because I felt it was important to get his point of view across, and that request was denied. So, I think the story has, and I've spoken to an awful lot of people for this story. I spoke to people in the government. I spoke to friends of the Prime Minister. I spoke to Congress leaders. And I spoke to a lot of newspaper editors, critics, columnists, and so on and so forth. A lot of them aren't quoted in the piece. But, just to clarify that point about the apology and the contacts that were made to the PM's office.
So, Denyer, are you saying that did you, in a way, assume Prime Minister's silence in this case because the Prime Minister's office was yet to get back to you? You assume that you're not getting a response from them?
No. They said that they wouldn't be giving any interviews. That's not... The silence actually is not... it's not about whether he speaks to me. I don't expect the Prime Minister to speak to me. The Prime Minister himself used the phrase about his own silence, in that couplet that he said the other day.
That's right.
That he doesn't respond to questions. So actually the silence comes from his own words. It also comes from, the general feeling that, not actually that he doesn't talk to the press, although some people say that, but the criticism of him, which, let's face it, this is something I'm not writing anything that hasn't been written 1,000 times in India by many Indian journalists and many Indian columnists. The criticism of him is that he's remained silent while there was corruption at high levels of his government. Not that, whether he talks to the press, frankly, is not really the main point.
But the chart, Simon, that's been oft-repeated in the Indian press, as you yourself mentioned. Indian journalists too have questioned that, too have brought into question Prime Minister's stony silence each time any of these scandals have erupted. He has maintained a stoic silence, which is infuriating it sometimes to a lot of people, including journalists. But are you clarifying for us that Washington Post has apologized? Has it apologized for the article it carried out on silent Prime Minister turning into a tragic figure, or has it not?
It has not apologized. The Washington Post has not apologized.